Hi guys, it's Colette. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'd like to tell you a story of one of my first shamanic soul retrievals. And I think it's an interesting one, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. It stayed with me many years. In fact, it was quite at the start of my shamanic path, and it kind of convinced me that this was a path I would have to explore majorly. So there'll not be any names in it, there'll not be any ways that people could maybe see who's who, but um, many years ago, over 25 years ago, um, I was doing a sweat lodge weekend with a female elder who I had been told was magnificent and was a joy to lead the lodge, the sweat lodge. And I had to travel for it, travelled quite far, and got there on the Friday afternoon. And in the evening, the elder started a drumming circle and chanting. And this was quite new to me, but well, maybe about a year new to me. I had my drum, which you can't see behind me, but I'll maybe put a photo of my drum. I can't play it anymore because of my hands, unfortunately. I'm definitely the wounded shaman, but anyway, I had my drum because I was learning to drum as part of the shamanic tradition that I'd become interested in, which was a Native American tradition. Because there's many shamanic traditions out there, but they all have similar themes, similar things in common, whether it's Celtic shamanism, whether it's Siberian shamanism, Native American. Yes, they are all quite different, but they have cores that are the same. So anyway, I had travelled quite far, so I was quite tired on the Friday night, but I wasn't going to let up in having, say, a drumming circle with people that were really good drummers. I wasn't. Let me see. Yep, this is going fine. So I went in even though I was tired, and it was actually really bad weather outside, so we were in a kind of barn type thing, and started the drummers that knew how to drum and started, and the chanting started, and it was magical. It was absolutely magical. And I started drumming too. One thing I would say that I can't chant and drum at the same time. I never have been able to. I can drum or I can chant, but I can't manage to do at once. I'm just not very good with doing two things at one time. So anyway, I decided to drum and not chant, and the chanting got louder and louder, and the drums got louder and louder, and then they became this just hum in the background. And I remember looking over at the female elder, and she was looking at me quite quizzically. And then I looked at another person in the room, and I felt drawn to that person, but for a reason. And as I looked at this person, I could see the elder following my eyes, and there was a sort of agreement between me and the person, but I didn't know what it was about. It was almost like, okay, I just said yes, and the person said yes, and I thought, this is weird, but I was very quite gone with the drumming and the chanting, and this is without any teacher medicines or anything. I've never really needed them to do what I do, to be honest. So anyway, next thing I knew, I could feel my arms go down by my side, so I stopped drumming, and my drum was just lying kind of upright on my belly, and it was weird. And again, I looked at the elder, and she had this, her face turned into like a snowy owl. It was like absolutely beautiful. And I thought, whoa, this is different. But I felt quite relaxed about it all. I felt as though I was floating above the sound in some way. So she kind of looked at me, sort of half elder female, half snowy owl on her. And the next thing I knew, to be honest, it was kind of seamless. One moment I was holding my drum, and the next minute I felt myself soaring above the land that we were on, which was very picturesque. But it was starting to get dark at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, don't know, it's getting a bit dark, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And then I thought, Colette, and then I was like, no, Colette doesn't, what am I doing? What's going on? And then I remember the feeling of strength in my shoulders and arms, and realizing that I was flying. And it was unbelievable. It was something like I've never felt. You know, you can watch things about flying or whatever, but I actually felt as though I was flying. And then when that came to me, I was so engrossed in the potential for flying, and also by that time I felt I was on a journey to get something. So I went with it, and as the time went on, I sort of moved my head, and when I looked kind of down, I realised that I had claws instead of legs, and that my arms had a huge wingspan. And I knew in my heart that I was flying as an eagle. Now, eagles do fly in the part of the country that I was in, and it felt natural, it felt wonderful, and even any discomfort I had or any sort of Colette thoughts that were coming through were very much, no, you've got something to do, just fly, just fly. And I remember flying into the darkness, and it got very dark, couldn't see very much, but still flew and flew and flew. And it was magnificent. I mean, I now know in my soul what it means like to fly like an eagle. And not much has come close since, to be honest. It was amazing. The strength, the power, the determination. So anyway, it got dark, it was dark, and then I could see the dawn coming, so I was aware that I'd flown through the darkness into the light, and then I seemed to know where I was going, which was across a sea. And then I went and picked up something, and it seemed to be something I didn't need to know about. It was just like a rock, kind of crystallized rock. But I remember picking it up in my claw and thinking, oh, right, I got to get back now, because this has to go to the White Owl for the person. And I flew back after almost a full day, I think, day and a half, because it was getting dark again by the time that I actually made it back to where I was. And I remember this sense of seeing where I was going, diving down towards it, and the next thing I knew, I was in amongst the people who were still drumming. They stopped chanting, but they were still drumming. And I remember as Eagle looking around and seeing the snowy owl female, who basically she was elder, she was owl, she was elder, she was owl. It was just this magnificent view of her. And I took whatever this rock thing was and put it in front of her. And she sort of nodded her owl head, and then took, well, the actual stone kind of moved itself. She didn't pick it up, she didn't move, but I knew she was putting it towards the person. And as it got to the person, it just, what looked like a rock became almost a shard of crystal, like clear quartz crystal, but magnificent. I've never seen anything like it. Um, and it was so bright and it was so amazing, and it just felt so good that it had been returned to the person. And at that point, I remember sort of coming to back in my body as Colette, and I looked over and the elder just smiled at me, and I looked at the person and they kind of looked at me as though thank you, and they kept drumming, and I realised that my drum was on my lap, and that I was I had I felt, have these people have been drumming for a day and a bit, because that's how long I thought I was away. Um, and they gently brought the drumming down, and they finished up for the night. I was still sitting in the chair. The person who the crystal, etc., had gone towards said thank you and walked away because they'd a lot to think about. And the elder came towards me and she said, you will need to rest over the next few days and not do sweat lodge. And I was like, oh, and she said, you need to rest. She said, and any questions you have about where you went or whatever, you can ask me while I'm here, but then that will be the end of it. And I was like, okay. So I remember going to the TP, like, and just on the way there, she took me there, and I said to her, how long was I away? And she said, oh, as you go. And I said, yes. And she said, about half an hour. And I was like, no, daylight, no, not half an hour. And she said, as you go, but in our drum circle, you were away for about half an hour. And I was like, oh, this is blowing my brain. I said, what was this? And she said, you brought part of a soul back. And I remember thinking, whoa. Something I'd read a little about. Obviously, I was in the things I was learning shamanically were way below that at that time. It was not something I would have aspired to do, and I thought I would need many years to be able to achieve it. But for some reason, that situation, a soul retrieval, through flying as an eagle to somewhere, it just happened spontaneously. Now, it wasn't, I mean, the universe obviously had planned for this person to be at the gathering, and also for, it was my first female elder that I'd done sweat lodge or spiritual shamanic work with, and it just seemed very nice and I enjoyed it. But it did leave me a thought of what, oh my God. So I wakened up the next morning and my first thought was, it's daylight, I really want to try to do sweat lodge, because I've come here, I've paid money to come with petrol and everything, and I really want to do lodge. And as I sat up like this, I had to lie back down because the pain in my shoulders and my arms was unbelievable. They were so stiff and so heavy that I couldn't even push myself up with them. And the elder came to visit me, and she said, that's why you're not doing lodge, but you need to rest for a few days and we'll be around you, and anything you want to ask, fair enough. She said, but there'll come a day where you can do this and not be in the pain that you are. She said, I didn't expect you to go but at one point you were drumming, and then I saw this sort of energy come over you. You put your drum to your body and you went, she said, and I knew that you'd gone without drumming, so I was going to keep that drumming going until you came back. And everybody in the room knew that you'd gone. They didn't know why. And I believe that it was only myself, the female elder, and the person who the shard was taken to that actually saw Eagle, Snowy Owl, and the shard. And nobody else mentioned that. They just were there drumming. So there was only 3 people, including myself, that knew what had happened. The rest knew something was happening and that they just were meant to be drumming, and they did, and they drummed me right back. And but for 2 whole days I could hardly move my arms. Drank lots of water, had grounding food, which was amazing. People kept bringing me food, and it was fantastic. And then I had to do probably about at that point about 170-mile drive to get home where I was living at the time. And I wasn't looking forward to it, but I did it, and I got home, and then I started to do more research on what had happened, looking up people's experience of soul retrieval. And again, I was very, very grateful for what happened, because a lot of people try and study and use techniques, maybe use teacher plants, whatever, to do soul retrieval at that level. And I just gone with a very wonderful group of people, a person that needed, obviously, part of the soul returned, with and under the auspices of a very powerful female elder. And it just happened. And it'll be an experience that stays with me forever, ever, ever more. And I've not really talked about it before. I don't even think it's in my memoirs. But when I wakened this morning and I thought I'm going to do some talk videos, because that's what I feel up to. And for some reason, this just came into my head, talking more about the shamanic art of soul retrieval, which I was honoured to do without really knowing what I was doing. But me as an ego, I think, knew what they were doing, or at least there was an instinct of going to a place. They knew where they were going. They knew what they were picking up. And as that, I just trusted that as I went as ego. But you look at eagles and you think, oh my goodness, they're amazing. But it was amazing. The power, I've never felt actually so powerful in my life, ever. But I did definitely suffer for it the few days later. Now that's what I believe was maybe showing up my, that I hadn't the background knowledge of whatever was happening at that time. I do now, so if I have to do journeys, don't really do them very often, to be honest. I haven't done one for about 4 years for someone. But I've been wrecked after them a bit, maybe needed a sleep for a day or whatever, but the muscle pain in my shoulders and arms was something else, and that's never happened again. So I'd like you to give me your comments, keep them kind. You don't need to believe this if you don't want to. I'm just telling you my experience. And if you liked this very, very, very intimate sharing of that knowledge, then please say so, because when this came up to me this morning, talk about, you know, the soul retrieval, I was like, not sure. I've not done that so much on my channel, but I then had to find the courage to actually walk my talk as such and be open with the experiences that I've had shamanically. And I hope you can appreciate that. And if you don't believe in it, or you think there's something off in it, please know that this is just my truth. So be kind, because I've been an ego. Anyway, let me know what you think, and also what you maybe have experienced if you've followed a shamanic way, or if you just find the whole thing fascinating. Many blessings now. Bye.